Thanks for staying with us. Time now for African news. Tonight, there are warnings that Ebola is spread at an unprecedented rate as Liberia confirms its first cases and Senegal shuts its borders to Guinea. Also, a bomb blast rips through Little Somalia in Nairobi. Our correspondent brings us the latest. And we head to Brussels for the latest on efforts to hold up violence in Central African Republic by sending in European troops. This, as Chad says, its peacekeepers are facing increasing violence from Christian militia. First up, at least 6 people have been killed in coordinated blasts in a Somali neighbourhood in Nairobi. The explosions happened Monday afternoon in Eastleigh. It's been targeted several times over the last year or so. Our Duncan Woodside's in the Kenyan capital. He brings us the latest.
At least 6 people have been killed in the blasts which took place in Eastleigh. That's the predominantly Somali area of Nairobi this evening. That number coming from the police spokesperson and also from a medic that I spoke to at the scene. However, the medic says that the number is likely to rise. He believes that at least 10 people have died and possibly more than that. That's as a result of bodies apparently being likely to have been trapped still within one of the buildings. Now, it seems that the method of attack was either grenades or bombs. We're not sure which of those yet or whether it was a mixture of both, but 2 separate locations have been targeted, 2 separate restaurants within about 50 meters from one another, and those restaurants apparently frequented by both Kenyans and Somalis. In terms of responsibility, we don't yet have any information on that. No one's claimed responsibility, but speculation is already rising that Al-Shabaab is responsible. Al-Shabaab, of course, being the Al-Qaeda-linked group, which is based primarily in Somalia, but has cells also here in Kenya.
Uganda's president says he's mobilising to fight gay people from the West, who he accuses of promoting homosexuality in Africa. Yoweri Museveni launched fresh condemnation of gay rights on Monday. His campaigners mobilised once more to fight a bill he signed into law last month, which brought in tough penalties for homosexuals. Julia Seeger has more.
They're determined to pursue their fight to overturn the law. On Monday, Uganda gay rights activists filed another legal petition against the Anti-Homosexuality Act, which was signed into law a month ago by President Museveni. It calls for tougher penalties against gays and prescribes life in jail for repeat homosexuals. Critics say the legislation flouted procedural requirements and is unconstitutional.
The act itself, which was passed, in criminalizing same-sex gender activity among adults in private, is in contravention of the principle of equality before the law, guaranteed under our Constitution.
While protests against the law have been ongoing around the world, it has also received broad support in the East African country. Critics say President Museveni signed the bill to win domestic support ahead of presidential elections scheduled for 2016. Which will be his 30th year in power. Activists say they have mixed feelings about the success of the petition.
In the past, we've gone to the courts of law, and there's a degree of independence with the courts. This whole law itself has been hyped. It has been politicized. It has been popularized for different selfish reasons.
Rights activists are now crossing their fingers that Uganda's courts will declare the new act unconstitutional. But even then, they still face an uphill battle of changing deeply entrenched cultural and religious beliefs that view homosexuality as wrong.
Now, the Ebola outbreak that has killed dozens in Guinea has become an unprecedented epidemic, say international aid workers. 78 people have died in Guinea, with cases distributed amongst the towns of Guekedu, Macenta and Conakry itself. For the first time, there's confirmation that the virus is spread across international borders. 2 definite cases in Liberia, one of which has been fatal. Sierra Leone's now got 2 suspected fatal cases in the northern Foya district. Meanwhile, Senegal's closed its borders with Guinea until further notice. Well, for more on this, Felix Akebo, who is UNICEF's deputy representative in Guinea-Conakry, joins us now. Felix, now what are some of the challenges in trying to contain the spread of Ebola beyond Guinea's borders?
Thank you. There are a lot of challenges. One of them is to contain the epidemic in Conakry because population are moving from one side to another side, and also because this was really abrupt to the community. This is the first time Ebola is coming to Guinea, so there is a need to do, a lot of things to do to have people understand and what is happening and how they can prevent the epidemic.
And thanks very much, Felix. But do you think that the Guinean government up till now is doing enough to stop the spread of this particularly virulent strain of Ebola?
Yeah, I think the government is doing a lot. Just the time they got to know that the epidemic coming, the first case was confirmed, they even quickly declared the epidemic, and at the same time they mobilized partners. UNICEF was one of them, and partners are working closely with the government to contain the epidemic. So there are a lot of things that the government is doing, and partners are doing a lot of things. And one thing that UNICEF has been doing is mainly to inform the communities, to sensitize communities on how to prevent the epidemic, how to avoid it, and get to know it, get to avoid it is something very important. So actually, we need to help the government, we need to mobilize funds, we need to see how we can reduce the fatality rate against, looking at this outbreak.
Thank you very much. Felix Akebo there, UNICEF's Deputy Representative in Guinea-Conakry. In other news, the African Union's defended Chadian soldiers who killed more than 30 civilians in Central African Republic's capital over the weekend. The MISCA peacekeeping mission insists troops were attacked by Christian militants, blamed for escalating violence. The country's been in turmoil since Muslim rebels launched a short-lived takeover last year, sparking an upswing in tit-for-tat attacks. The UN's planning on eventually sending in its own peacekeeping mission. Meanwhile, the EU has been criticised for running behind in delivering its promised troops. Well, Maeve McMahon brings us the latest on delays on that front from Brussels.
It's been kind of slowly but surely movement. EU officials back in January said that the Central African Republic situation was the forgotten crisis, but we're yet to see European troops on the ground. The thing is, EU ambassadors have held already 5 force generation meetings, and only just at the last meeting last Friday did they finally come to a decision. Now, force generation meetings are held to decide which member states are going to pledge what regarding troops and logistical support. And eastern countries had already pledged a number of troops, for example, Estonia and Poland, but due to the situation in the Ukraine, a number of states seem to have gotten cold feet, thinking really that they needed to sort out the security in their backyard, as opposed to sending it to the Central African Republic. But this weekend, they did finally endorse that mission, and in the next few days we will get more details, but it's likely we'll see between 500 and 1,000 European troops looking after the Bangui airport area and allowing the current 6,000 African Union troops that are out there and the current 2,000 French troops that are out there to relieve them so they can look after more serious areas. Now, this mission is likely to cost the European Union some €25.9 million and will last some 6 months.
Maeve McMahon there for us. Well, that wraps up African News from me for today. I'll be back with more tomorrow. Take care.